All right, welcome back. We are MDEV1004, Mobile APIs and Frameworks, and in the summer 2024 semester, and it's week 9, and this should have been part 4 of our broadcasts. But I had a bit of a technical issue, and this is only part 3. And this is the technical issue. I lost my broadcast. It rarely happens to me, but it did happen today. For whatever reason, when I was streaming last, I wasn't able to save it up on YouTube or locally. So let's talk about what happened and what I was able to accomplish. I did everything, and it's been stored on GitHub, which is good. GitHub is my savior, as always, and it should be yours. And it happens to the best of us. This is the kind of stuff that can happen. But let's talk about where we're at. So what did I do? I'm going to briefly go over the things that I did to make everything work. I added a details activity. Okay, so details activity, just going to show you, just hide this for a second. It kind of looks like this. So I'm just going to go to the details structure. So it kind of looks like this. And what I kind of did was I used this structure here, which is the structure that we got from our, the one from iOS, right? And what I wanted to do was, kind of take a look at this and see what we were going to get. So this is kind of what it looks like. So if you notice here, this is reflecting what I have here in my layout. This is kind of thing. So if I kind of click on this, then I'm going to have these things. Okay, so I kind of match the style here with everything else. This layout, activities details, is up on GitHub. Okay, unfortunately I built it manually, but it's up on GitHub. And the other thing that I wanted to show you was the details activity. So the details activity itself has a lot of the functionality that we wanted on the, that we wanted to use, which was exactly kind of the same thing that we did on the iOS side. Okay, so let me explain how this works from the stuff that I've added. So the first thing I had to do here before we got there was I had to update the data manager. And for the data manager, what I did was I added additional functions that we didn't have last week. I added get movie by ID, add movie, update movie, and delete movie. Okay, so I kind of did that first, right? After I built the user interface, I worked on the data manager to make sure this was good. The next thing I did was, after I had this part, so this is what you need to do next, I needed to update the movie view model, And for the movie view model, all we had was a get all movies method, right? So get all movies is the function that we had here. And what I did was I added get movie by ID. And what this allows me to do is get the movie by ID by using the API response movie, right? And then we wait for the successful response, and then we kind of respond with an individual movie, and we post this body, right? So that's what it does. So this returns, kind of an object of type movie, all right? And that's what it does, and only one object if it finds it. That's what this does. Okay, so that's that object. The next one is adding a movie, very similar. So data manager, add movie. And again, I use the data manager for everything. So if you look here, these are the actual calls. So I said something like, hey, add movie. And then I went to this API service and I call the add movie method and I on-queue this. So if you look at the API service, what that's really doing, which is the API response, here's the API response. The API response itself is based on, the success message and data that we kind of set up before together when we were putting this together, the API earlier. The API, the service, like we talked about last time, was the actual calls. So this is using retrofit to use, the base URL and add, the base URL and update, the base URL and delete, and so on. All right, so this is what this kind of does, which is very kind of interesting in the way it works. So data manager kind of uses this, right? And as a result, it passes this as a wrapper to our view model. Now we're using the view model, which is important because the view model is a bridge between our data and our user interface. That's what it does, right? So we kind of added the add movie. This is what add movie does. And then, of course, the update movie. which is very similar. All of them, in fact, are very similar, right? Realistically, we could probably cut some of this down by creating a function to reduce some of this code duplication, because there is quite a bit of code duplication here. But then, and finally, the delete movie. So if you're actually watching this video, these are the things you need, these pieces that you need to make the data manager, and the movie model work properly. So I had to do these as dependencies. Then I had to modify the first adapter slightly. And I talked about this. What I did was I added some drawables. So I added in the drawables, I added a text view border. That's what I added here. Here's a text view border. And the text view border allowed me to put borders around the rating. And that was the critics rating, right? I also added background colors. So here's gray, green, red, and yellow, red and yellow. And these background colors, I add them in as drawables here. And so these drawables, right, what they did was they're used in the first adapter. And the first adapter basically scrolls through and says, okay, so if the rating is 7 or greater, then we're going to change the set background resource color to the green drawable, as an example. And the view holder is also going to change the color to black, as an example, if it's greater than 7. If it's 5 to 7, it's going to be yellow and black. Else, if it's lower than 5, it's going to be red and white. That's what it's going to be. How about though if we don't have any rating at all for some reason, because rating is optional? Well, then it's going to show NA, a background color of gray, and a color of white. So that's what I kind of added in here. I also added an update movies function. And what this would do is it would notify the data set that has changed. And I use this outside of this function itself, outside of the first adapter, just in case I need to trigger the data set or the movies that are updated. That's what this does. This thing does here. Okay. So for the most part, it didn't change much. Okay. This is the thing that I've got in here. I did add the ability for me to click on a row, and so that when I click on the row, then it can update the. It can take us to the details activity. That's what this thing does. Okay. So for the most part, it's pretty good. And here's where I actually added this piece, where if you click on a row, then it passes the movie that's clicked in the dataset position out from the first adapter back to the main activity. Okay, that's what it does. So back into the main activity then, here's this. What we have in the main activity, just scrolling up from the top, is we have our first adapter where we initialize it with an empty list, right? The first adapter itself is, we bind it to the recycler view that we see inside of the layout. And I have changed the layout of main activity as well. In main activity, so that's activity main layout. All right, I'm just going to go there for a second. Here's the activity main. The thing that I've added is two things. I've added a title. I've changed the recycler view so it kind of pushes down a little bit. And at the bottom, I've added a FAB, a floating action button. The floating action button, when you click onto it, then it will take you as a new movie over to the details view. And again, when we add a new view, for those of you who don't know, what you want to do is you want to go to layout, and I want to do new, and then activity, and I chose the empty views activity to kind of create my my details view. So the details view, or the details activity here, there's two pieces. There's the code itself, as well as the activity details XML, this thing that you're seeing here. And the reason why I did it that way when I added it in is it also updates the manifest. So the manifest itself, what happens is there's two activities. The one that's main is the one that's the entry point to the application. And then the second activity here is the details activity, where we can get to from main. In order for me to traverse or navigate from main to the details activity, I use either a button or a press onto each of the rows. And when I do that, it allows me to connect to the details activity through an intent. So if I go back to main activity, which is our first activity. The main activity, what it does is I have a couple things I set up: the view model, the first adapter, and a mutable list of movies that we talked about last week. The first adapter sets up an empty list, like we said for the first part. We bind the first adapter to the first recycler view, which is part of the layout. The view model, what it does is it also connects first adapter, and what we do is as soon as the view model is observing a change, it calls the first adapter update movies object to update the movies in the list. Okay. Meanwhile, first adapter on movie click, that's kind of what we set up. It sets up an intent, and it sets up two things. Okay. The first thing we do is we set up the movie ID. We pass the movie ID as an extra, because remember, when you move from one activity to the other, you can do something like create extras. Extras are almost like a container of key value pairs that we can pass in from one activity to the other. So put extra, all that does is we put two things: the movie ID, which is movie.id, that we get from the movie that we've clicked, that we've pressed on, right? And that goes over to the through the intent to the details activity, right? And we also put up a little flag that says, hey, is this an update or not? This is how we're handling it this way. We could have done the same thing as we did. We could have done this actually on the iOS side, where we set up a flag that says it's an update or not. We just did it differently on the iOS side. But really, at the end of the day, is we start the activity and go to that intent when you press on any of the rows that exist, okay? And then, however, the other way to do it is using the add button, which is that floating action button. When we click on the add button, then we put an extra that this update is false. It's not an update, it's something new. And there is no movie ID that we pass over there. And then we start the activity, right? That's how we do it there. I've also, for deletion, I've set up a swipe to delete callback, right, which I put together here. And what this does, it's going to go here, is actually it's something that we use an item touch helper. And the item touch helper itself is a simple callback that basically allows me to, when I swipe left, right, as an example, or right in this case, right, then what I'm doing is I'm allowing this thing to basically trigger a deletion. And basically when on move, right, whether on the recycler view, with the view holder that we have, the target, of course, is the recycler. This is the override, the on move function, which basically returns false. So we don't really use this thing. This is if I'm moving it, if I'm trying to drag and drop or something like that. But on swiped is something that is part of the swipe to delete callback that's built into the simple callback. And on swiped, basically what we're doing is we're setting up an alert dialog. So basically an alert is like a pop-up that comes up and says, hey, are you sure? And if you press OK, then what happens is we dismiss the dialog, and we proceed to delete the movie through the view model, right? So this triggers the deletion, okay? And then the negative button, cancel, stops the deletion from happening, right? So that's little alert dialog that happens when I swipe left or right, from this thing, which is kind of the similar behavior that we have on the iOS side. We have the on resume override so that when we come back from the details activity, then the list is refreshed. That's what this is. Okay, so that is the main activity. So now that we know that when I press on the movie, or if I press on the button, it goes to the details activity. Let's see what happens there. So the details activity basically sets up the view model and a couple of things. The is update Boolean. Is it an update or not? And movie ID. Do I have a movie ID or I don't? If I have a movie ID and if it's an update, then I'm going to load the movie data by getting movie by ID, right? And I'm going to load that into our, kind of our interface that we built. Okay, so that's what we're doing there. So I can say is update. We get the Boolean extra from the container that we sent over from the main activity. And movie ID is we get the string extra, from the intent object. Okay, that's what we're doing here both times. And then we're checking. We're saying, hey, if is update and we have a movie ID and they're not equal to null, if those two are true, or if we have an update If update is true and movie ID is not equal to null, then what we want to do is we want to view model get movie by ID. So that's what we're doing with the view model. Once we get the movie by ID, we observe the movie. And we're using the observer pattern here. And if we have a movie, if a movie exists, then what we're going to do is we're going to set text of the user interface for movie ID, title, studio, genre, all the stuff that's inside of the interface. We're going to set it with the stuff that we're going to get from the movie, if it exists. Okay, that's what this does. Then we also have the update button. If the update button is clicked, okay, then what we want to do is we want to instantiate an object of type movie. We take the information from the interface, whatever that is, and we assign it to the movie object itself. Now this is very similar to the iOS side, right? The only difference is here we split these things up and we defined their types on the iOS side, where here we didn't do that. And then if it's an update, then we call the view model update movie. And if it's not an update, then we just add a new movie. So there's two different things that we're doing here. Either way, we're going to finish. Finish brings us back to the previous screen, which is the main activity. And if we press cancel, of course, that also brings us back to the main activity. So if we press the cancel button, or if we press the update button, different things occur. Now, there's still things that are missing. Like, for example, I'm not doing any validation. If I don't type anything in, like at all, it's just going to crap out the entire thing. So one thing that we could do is we can verify that we have something at all in the movie ID or the title. Like, remember, we need a couple things actually. We need title and studios minimum is what we said, right? So that's something that we can definitely add, right, in this part. And we haven't done that yet. And from a time perspective, I'm not going to do that here. So again, it can break. Like if you don't do that, that's going to break. But it's the same thing for iOS. If we don't add a title or a studio and we try to add a new movie, it's going to break, right? So that's something that we haven't done. And maybe next week, if we have time and we're going to build upon this thing, it's going to be a little better. So that's really how the pieces are there. The code is up on GitHub, okay? And I apologize again for the video being done. I actually spent an hour and 30 minutes making this stuff, but the video's gone. So that's not very good. And it is what it is. It happens, right? So I do apologize for that. But the code is here, and I want to show you what it looks like finally. So let's run it. Again, hopefully it's not timed out. Probably is by now. Yes, it is. And then we're just going to wait for render to not time out. But you can see here that we have a couple of movies that I've added in. But the effect is that we have a very similar interface. And now what you have is two examples. One example which is on iOS and the other one that's on Android. And you can decide which template, this is what I've given you, that you want to use for your assignment 3. Okay, so assignment 3s can use either template. You can use the iOS side or you can use the Android side and create the assignment 3 very similarly from what I've given you here. Again, there's minor things missing. Validation is something you're going to have to add and a couple things like that. But you can see that if I go back to Android Studio now and let's just refresh, then you can see that we have this. So again, if I was to, let's delete this one. This is a bad movie. We added Godzilla -1 before on iOS, but let's swipe it. So if I swipe it to the right, or if I swipe it to the left, it's going to pop up that thing. Now I can change this behavior. So if I was to go back to the swiping behavior on main activity, and let's say, for example, well, I really don't want the swipe direction to be right and left. I just want it to be right or left. So from the left. So then I can just delete this part, which is swiping from the left, item touch helper left. And if I undo that, or item touch helper right. Let's undo the left. So from the left, that's not how we delete. We delete from the right, that kind of stuff, right? So let's do that. From the left, usually it's an update of some kind, right? So that's the way we're going to do it. There we are. So item touch helper right. That's what this does. And I'm just going to save that and relaunch. Let's try that again. So then this time if I swipe from the left, right? Let's see. Cancel. And if it's from the right, yeah, so if it's from the right, actually it's from the right is wrong. Let's see. It's this actually it'll just load this up. So let's go back there. Actually I want it the other way around. I don't want it this way. I want it this way. So that's from the left. All right, let's try that again. So let's undo those changes. And I'm just going to go there and just grab this part and delete this part. There we go. That's left and right. We just want it from the other side. Let's try that again. So minor changes here. And so again, if I go from this side, now you can see that, you know, from right to left is what this means. Then I can decide whether I want to delete it or not. This way it doesn't work. You can see that, right? But if I do that and if I press OK, now that movie's gone. All right, so that's how it works. I can edit if I click here, and if I go to Matrix and I say, well, I want to make it Matrix 2, and if I press this little down arrow and update, you can see that it was working. Oh, well, okay, so that what that needs, there it is an update. So there's a slight, it was just a delay. So it had to kind of go there and update, right? But you can see that that worked. So we can have this part. And then if I was to do it again, just curious if that update didn't work. Update. Yeah, so when I update, I also have to refresh the screen. And I think it's happening because, little minor details, right? So when I update, let's go back there. So if I go to the details activity, right? When I'm clicking the update button, it's actually doing it, right? And the thing that's happening is we're finishing, right? So this is when it's happening. We're finishing there. And one thing that I need to do is when we get back to main, right? Then the view model get all movies is triggering, right? This is on resume, right? This is when this happens on resume. And it seems that there is a delay because it's asynchronous, right? So this is going to happen when it happens. Canceling is no problem because when I cancel, it's going to happen automatically, like when I go back, right? But it seems as if there's a bit of a delay here, and we can fix that. I'm not going to fix it here in the video. I'm going to fix it on my own. I'm going to put it up on GitHub. But there is a bit of a fix for this. But for the most part, that's what it does. So if I go back there and if I press cancel, you can see that now it's Matrix, right? But if I go there and press Matrix 2, right, and I press update, you know, it's not there right now. It's just Matrix, right? And if I press it again and go back, now it's there. You can see that just it needs another refresh. That's all it needs, right? So it's there. It does do the update. It's just me refreshing the screen here that I have to work on. So this is the way it works. If I add a new one, let's add a new movie. So let's say we'll add a new one like Back to the Future. So let's say this will be number 8, and we'll say Back to the Future. Right, and let's say, I think that's, is that WB? I think I remember. Let's just load this one, Back to the Future. So we'll say this is from our Rotten Tomatoes, and we'll go Back to the Future. That's 1985, I think, Back to the Future. Oops. Right, Back to the Future, there it is, 1985. Michael J. Fox, Christopher Lloyd are the 2 stars. And who is the, it's on the bottom here, right? Universal Pictures. So that's the distributor of Universal Pictures. So then I can go back here and fill in that detail. So again, it's Universal Pictures. And the genre, I would say is science fiction, adventure, sci-fi, adventure, comedy, I would say for sure. Lots of comedy in there. Director is Robert Zemeckis. I don't know if I spelled his name right. Let's see if I did. Probably not. CKIS. CKIS, oh yeah. CKIS. Robert Zemeckis, the writers, I don't know who they are, but let's see who they are. Screenwriter is Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale. Okay, so cool. We have two. So Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, right? And actors, Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. Poor Michael J. Fox. And then length, let's see, that is, so rating is PG. Yeah, comedy, sci-fi, fantasy, adventure, okay. And, wow. 1 hour and 56 minutes, so that's 116 minutes, right? No. Yes, 116 minutes. Because 120 minutes is 2 hours. 116 minutes, so that's 116 minutes. 116. And year is 1985. And a short description we're going to get from there, which is this part, the synopsis. And let's copy that part and go put that in. Let's see if it breaks actually, because we are going to put this short description right here. So we're going to say, maybe it didn't work. Let's try that again. So copy. Maybe you can't do that. Yeah. Yeah, I can't do that. So let's just go on. So we're going to go to, pull this down and go to MPA rating, which I'm going to say is 8.5, and critics rating, oh sorry, MPA rating is PG. Critics rating is 9.5 or 9.3. We can actually go to Metacritic too, just to check that. Metacritic, and then we'll say Back to the Future. There we go, 8.7. That's what it is, 8.7. So that's what they think it is. And back to this. So 8.7. And then we could probably type in, you know, some of that stuff. You know, Marty McFly accidentally goes back to the future to ensure that his mom and dad meet. There we go. Because he messed it up. He had to do it because when he went back, he messed it up, and here it is. So this is the description. You know, it's not a great one. It's not full or whatever, but this is the movie I'm adding in. I'm going to click Update, and again, there's Back to the Future. Actually, it added it in, right? So that's kind of good, right? And did I have that already? Cancel. I did. I have a duplicate. There's Back to the Future with all this other stuff, 17-year-old high school student. So I added in, but so you can see that the update needs to happen. So now let's delete it again. So I can kind of delete this thing and press OK. That's a duplicate, and it's gone. So we did add it in. We just need to do a bit of an update. That's it for today. It's been a long day for me. It's 5:32. Our class ended at 2, so I spent the next couple hours figuring out my technical issues, like lots of problems, connecting to the internet today, connecting to the room, lots of stuff. But anyways, it's done, and the only thing I need to put up is just the changes here to the terminal. So I'll say git add dots, git commit -m, and we'll say modified swipe from right to left to delete. Hit push. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm going to fix this problem with the updating, and I'll put that up. Okay, guys? But otherwise, for next week, and this is something we should talk about as well. I'm just going to bring this up. Next week, again, remember that we're adding authentication views. For in-class exercise 8, the requirement is make it work for both iOS and Android. Okay, kind of what I've shared with you already. Talk about it. I want you guys to understand how it works, not just copy paste, right? Because again, on the test, which is coming up, and like we're week 9, and we're going to go to week 14, right? So week 14, you're going to have a test that's going to go from the whole week like normal. You're going to be tested, and you can choose either iOS or Android for your user interface, but you're going to need to use one of them. Okay, so it's coming up, and so next week when when I release assignment 4, you're going to see that it includes authentication, and we're going to work on adding authentication views starting next week. So we should have most of everything you need to complete your assignment 4 by next week. And again, this week, by tomorrow now, I plan to do marking today and get it all done. By tomorrow now, all the marking should be in for in-class exercise 7. That's from last week, as well as anything that was outstanding, assignments or midterms, that kind of stuff that for whatever reason weren't marked because you didn't have your video or your GitHub link or whatever. Okay, and that's what's happening there. Please connect with me on Discord if you have an issue. And again, I apologize for the loss of video, which I lost an hour and a half of recording. But most of the stuff that, like I said, is going to be up, and you should be just fine with reading the code and getting it done. And it's pretty good. I know some people did watch it because I saw some people were on the the video watching it. So I think that's pretty good. And that's it for me, guys. Take care, and I'll see you next week. Thank you. Oh, by the way, one more thing. Next week we are remote, so I'm not going to be physically in class. All right.